Do you see that lovely splash of yellow over there? That is where we're going to stealth camp tonight. So let's see if we can get there and how it's going to look once we are there. Well, we forced our way into this thicket of Broom Tree. I had seen this a year ago or two when it was flowering so beautifully, and I thought, wow, I want to stealth camp here one day. Just let me give you the guided tour of the place. I had to force my way through all this brush. Here is some sort of little, like a dried up creek with bulrushes. This is Broom Tree, and all the way around is a thicket of Broom Tree, and here we are back to where we were. And so I'm going to set up camp here in the simplest way. This is my favorite type of camping, where I have to do virtually nothing. I'm going to simply lay out a top. So here is our top. And we're going to just spread it out, and then later tonight I'm going to blow up my air mattress. But I don't want to blow it up quite yet, because there's just no point in that. It's good for sleeping, it's not that good for lying on. There's our liquid refreshment. Here is our sleeping bag. Here is my blow-up mattress. Pillow. Here. And I'm keeping the food rather simple. And so we're going to open our beer. I brought this knife along to open it. Well, cheers, here we are. And we're inside a beautiful flowering broom tree. It's about half an hour before the sun sets. It was a spur of the moment decision to come here tonight, so I just boiled a few eggs. I had a few cupcakes, which I'm going to have. But I don't want to spoil the taste of the beer by having the cupcakes. So I'd love this kind of stealth camp where it's just so simple. It's grassy bottom. I don't have to do anything. I don't have to set it up. I'm completely enclosed in a thicket of broom trees. I don't have to. No one would see me if I don't put on a light, or no one would hear me if I shut up. But there's no one around. I always try to check around first before I go into my stealth shelter. It's about 18 degrees. It's one of the cooler nights, Celsius, that we've had lately. We've had in the 22s and 3s, but it did rain. The soil up here, because we're on a slight rise, there's no dampness, there's no wet soil. I think it's just going to be magnificent. So when I stealth camp like this, I've been thinking a lot, because we have in South Africa a day called Heritage Day, in which we are supposed to analyze our culture, but we in South Africa must overdo everything and we make it Heritage Month. So I've been trying to think, what is my heritage? And you know, there's so many stereotypes. Yeah, South Africans like to braai or barbecue, and we like sunshine. But actually, there's no real culture that I could think of, except we have the classical Western culture. And then we got a whole half a dozen or dozen other cultures in South Africa that are slightly different from Western, because we have so many languages and cultures and diversity of people, and we're supposedly like a rainbow nation. But I really got to thinking on that during that Heritage Month, and what is my culture? It really became so important to me to think, what is my culture? And then I would listen to people like on podcasts talking, and I remember this one podcast, I was traveling with my son, and this guy was saying something about you have to earn your prejudice. And I just thought, wow, this is crazy. All the stuff he was saying was very funny, but it was crazy. It just didn't make any sense. How do you mean earn your prejudice? Is it right to be prejudiced? Must you suffer to be prejudiced? Even if you suffer, should you still be prejudiced? So it sounded good, but I thought, what nonsense these people talk. And then I got thinking, you know, my culture is a combination of the Western culture. Our household, my wife, my son, myself, we had like a household culture, which is probably different from any other household's culture. And then I thought to myself, like, I listen to the advice people give. Like, people are having these failed marriages because they're all bickering and they're arguing. The wife's talking to everybody about how bad the husband is. And I thought, but that's not my culture. It's not. I thought, I know my culture is whatever the Bible says, that is my culture. And the Bible says that wives should submit to their husbands and husbands should love their wives. Okay, I don't have time to go into submit. If you don't want to submit to someone, then probably it's better not to get married. Someone's got to be large and in charge and make the final decision. But I know that this just sounds to the Western ear so terrible, and I really don't want to get onto that, because, oh, now you're going to think of that for the rest of this video. But it's not it's a matter of, I thought, if these people who were having these marriage problems would just honor each other, don't necessarily do anything more than honor each other. I thought that is so biblical, and it would so help the marriage. I mean, if each person's despising the other and telling everybody they know how bad the partner is, it's not going to help the marriage if everybody's now spread abroad all the knowledge of their wedding, of their particular bad marriage. So I thought, honestly, if husbands could love their wives and wives could honor their husbands, it would just make. So I started thinking, in everything, my culture is a biblical culture. I try to make it a biblical culture. So where it's not, I try to make it that. So I had a bit of an incident today, which I was raking up the lawn mowings on a communal park, which someone had kindly mowed, even though the authorities don't mow this park. And so they left all the grass clippings there, and we'd already gathered some and put it onto the communal garden. So I was raking up all these clippings, and then I put them into the duvet, and then I was carrying the clippings to the communal garden. No one's paying me to do this. It's a free service. Everybody loves that you're doing it. Someone's volunteering to do some stuff. And one of the neighbors called the security, and then they accosted me, and then they were wanting to question me, and I thought to myself, my natural reaction was to get so furious at this and indignant. But anyway, I was fairly polite. I didn't belt anybody, and I told them, I'm breaking up the lawn mowings and taking it to the communal garden. Yeah, but you're not allowed to do that. I said, oh, please, man. I thought to myself, this guy's an idiot, but I didn't say it because biblical culture, you're not allowed to call someone an idiot or a fool. And I thought the citizen that had called this security company is also an idiot. But all they saw was me with a big duvet carrying a bag of, let's say, maybe it was full of, they thought full of televisions and stuff I'd stolen from a garage. It didn't dawn on me at that time that that's probably what the person who reported me thought. And anyway, I'm not allowed to call the neighbors an idiot because the Bible says don't call anyone a fool. And I found out it was a good friend of mine who'd called the security company, not knowing who was the person carrying all this grass clippings to the garden, about half a mile or so to carry it. So anyway, I thought to myself, everything one does has to be regulated by culture. We can't hate people. We can't hold grudges against people. We can't call people fools. I mean, I can do it in the heat of the moment very easily, but I have to fight and say, yeah, but my culture is actually not one of hating people or violence or killing or anything like that. I mean, please, let's just not even go down that route. You know, I thought a biblical culture is first of all loving God, respecting God, and what God says goes, and involving God in everything. And I thought to myself, you know, Western culture is just not biblical culture. People sometimes confuse Western culture with biblical culture. For example, democracy. There's no such thing as democracy in the Bible. Democracy is never mentioned or punted in the Bible. God talks about kings and priests. Doesn't ever talk about democracy, that you get to choose your leaders. And God certainly rules as a king. He doesn't ask people's permission or ask their opinions. He basically rules. God rules. And I thought to myself, that's what I am. I'm a servant of God. In everything, I have to subjugate my own primary emotions and first feelings, and this is my opinion and this is the way I would do it, and I have to subject that to, no, what does God say on the subject? You've got to love God, first of all, and respect him. I mean, how many people even know their Bible, let alone even the New Testament? When you read the New Testament, it doesn't teach you, there's nothing in the Western culture that's emphasized in the New Testament. God doesn't care whether you clean or not. He doesn't care whether you work or not. He doesn't care whether you're rich or not. He doesn't care whether you're successful or not. God never mentions those things. God just says love. He seems to love the poor. He's never ever emphasized, oh, Peter's great fisherman. He was great at his job. God doesn't care how you are with your job. He just wants, the thing that matters to God is, do you love God? Are your thoughts centered around God? Do you ask God's involvement in your life? For example, let's take Western nations. We just love to go to war, go and beat up some country in the Middle East or whatever, just because, I mean, let's take the war in Iraq as a total example of a wasted war, or Vietnam. Christianity is all about loving your neighbor, turning the other cheek. Christian culture, when Peter wanted to swing that knife, Christ had to undo the damage that he'd done. Nowhere in Christian culture in the New Testament will you ever find encouragement to go out and wield a weapon and go to war or something. So when the South African army called me up to, it was compulsory, I said, okay, I'll cook in the kitchen. I'm not going to fight I'm not going to bear a gun. And so that's how I got around it. And this was at about age 20. So my culture, even back then, my culture was that I'm not going to fight for the South African army. I don't have any bad feelings. I don't have enemies. And most wars, like the South African War, just turned out a total waste of time. We just gave Namibia back to the Namibians. And yeah, I just think of, like, I knew right from young, when I proposed to my wife, I knew that I would never be wealthy. Wealth is not part of my culture. I don't care about wealth. And that's sort of like a biblical culture thing too. The Bible never encourages you to be wealthy. It doesn't care. It doesn't encourage you to be poor either. But it doesn't encourage you to, never says, Oh, look how great, look how wealthy the apostles were. No, the apostles were bone poor. All the Christians shared everything they had. They were poor. The rich sold their possessions and gave it to the poor so they could eat at their love feasts, etc. So let's never confuse our culture, Western culture. Everything in Western culture, this love of materialism, this love of success, of fame, of music, of fighting, of this whole popularity with celebrity cultures, movies. There's nothing actually great about it. And the Bible encourages, if you're going to raise a child according to biblical culture, you just want that child to be centered towards God, and love neighbor. In other words, try to be a decent, nice human being, not a liar, not a thief, not a murderer, not covetous, not an idolater, not a fornicator. You basically want to raise a kid who follows biblical values. And it's so anti the West. I mean, look at the Western morality. No one gets married. Everyone's sleeping around. Then, because they sleep around, there's unwanted babies. All of this has got nothing to do with biblical culture. Biblical culture, you wait till you ready to marry. When you get married, then you have sex, and then you stay together for the rest of your life. That's biblical culture. There's no divorce. So that was basically, I have tried to follow biblical culture as much as possible. And then if you give your word, or you say you're going to do something or be somewhere, you try to keep your word. I mean, I remember I told my wife, if you don't like this house, I'll sell it. She didn't like the house, and I had to sell it. So it was, I can hear people, so I'm going to keep quiet for a moment. So, yeah, there's a path that just goes past you where people walk their dogs. They don't do it after dark, though. So, biblical culture it's a conservative, it's what does God say that you do? It's not like my opinion is, it doesn't matter, we can all just live together and do whatever we like with whoever we like, swap partners, do whatever. I mean, it's just nuts. And now people don't want kids, and they don't want, kids are unwanted, and I mean, that's just not part of true biblical culture. So anyway, I'm saying that don't confuse Western culture with Christian culture. It's got nothing to do with Christian culture. We love our sport. That's got nothing to do with Christ. We idolize all pop stars and people. We spend all our time on entertainment. But let's just ask ourselves, do we love God? Do we involve God? When last did you hear a president of America or any country say, look, we got this problem, we got this drought, we got this flood, we got this storm coming up. Please, God, divert the storm away from us. Help us. Look to God to solve the problem. Some terrorist attacks the Twin Towers on September 11th or whatever. Do people go and ask God, what shall we do? We're just not going to go and just beat everybody up because Osama bin Laden has trained people to fly planes into the Twin Towers. So, as I say, do we consult God? Do we start to think, God, as a Christian culture, maybe we should love our enemies? I mean, this war in Israel, for example, the way the Israelis are treating the Palestinians, how about a bit of love and kindness and treat them and try to give them all that money that's been wasted on the war could have been spent on building them up and making them loved and prosperous and things to live. Now these poor people, they just, the way they treat it, there's no biblical culture in that. It's like worse than Old Testament. It's not even Old Testament culture. So, and we support that. We're happy with that. We allow that. I mean, it's a shocking, it's a shame. Ashamed I am of our tolerance of the way the Palestinians are treated. And I mean, let's confuse this with biblical culture. This is not biblical culture to treat people like so badly. We're supposed to try and love them, give to them, encourage them, make them your friends, so that they'll be more reluctant to want to bomb and shell and hate you. So anyway, that's my feeling on just some of the news items and so on. And as I say, I'm just so examining everything I do and make sure that it's actually biblical culture. Is everything I do rooted in what the Bible says? Like, I've got food and raiment, I'm here with content. Who cares about wealth or success or popularity? I mean, it's just not, that is just not part of Christian culture. So, but contentment is. Godliness with contentment is great gain, the Bible says. Now, how many people think that that's a great thing? Hey, here's this person, he's just stealthing his out here, he's happy. Many people could be doing this. I'm not saying this is biblical culture, but I'm saying I'm content. I'm out here. I'm happy. I've got nothing. I've got this beer. I've got a couple of... Let me show you what I have got. That I'm going to have. Put this beer somewhere where I'm not going to drop it. Let me show you what I've got that I'm really looking forward to later on. So, here's what our food supply is. Got a couple of hard-boiled eggs. As I say, this is all very impromptu. I've got some icing sugar and some cherries. Then I made these delicious cupcakes that look the worse for wear. I make these little cupcake holders out of paper, printer paper, that I just cut. So there's the lovely cupcake. Oh, just have a look inside that. Absolutely delicious. And then it's going to have, this is filled with icing sugar and cherries. So it looks a bit of a mess, but I've got to ice the cupcake and put the cherries on top. So I don't want to do that before I finish the beer, otherwise the sweetness is going to ruin my taste. And then I've got the eggs, and I brought a bit of salt with, and that's what I've got. And I'm going to be, I know, totally happy here. And yeah, so that is great. So I would say godliness with contentment is great gain. It's part of the reason why I stealth camp is to learn to be content with nothing. Nothing. Who cares what people think? Who cares about popularity? Who cares about wealth? Who cares about fame? One must just learn to center one's eyes upon the Lord and just be happy with nothing or very little. Don't make it that the things that you have are what make you happy, or the people you know, or whatever the situation. It's got to be perfect before you're happy. So anyway, it's going to be reasonably cold, as I can feel as the sun is setting, but it's going to be lovely here tonight. Well, I pretty much destroyed the cupcake, but I know it's going to be delicious. Absolutely delicious. I made 6 of them and I had 4 ready today. these are the last two. There's the cherry. I lost the top to the beer, so I was forced to finish it. Such a punishment. So terrible. Here's the last bit of the cupcake. One cupcake. I'm going to save the other one for later. Delicious. Just look at that thicket above. Wow, wow, wow. These are the branches that are above me. I will have no view of the stars tonight, which is a pity. But it's thick. I'm in the middle of a thicket of broom trees. So I've blown up my mattress, my pillow, there's the sleeping bag, there's some pine trees over about 200 meters away, and it looks like a troop of baboons has taken up residence there for the night. I will try and see. I'm sure during the early morning hours they're going to be calling or bocheming, and I'll see if I can record some sound of them in those pine trees sleeping there for the night. So I'm perfectly safe, they're not going to bother me, but it'd be interesting if I can get some audio footage of them bocheming during the night. Well, the baboons squabbled for the first couple of hours of the evening. The moon is just about to set in the west. Otherwise it's quite a windy but very pleasant evening. So we'll say good night.